This morning, nearly a year after a commercial passenger jet crash landed at San Francisco International Airport, the NTSB is releasing its findings from the investigation. 3 people died in that accident and the minutes that followed.
Asiana Airlines Flight 214 hit a seawall ahead of the runway. Deborah Hersman chaired the NTSB at the time. She got to the scene just hours after the disaster and stayed there for a week. Welcome.
Good morning.
So what's the biggest revelation coming forward?
You know, I think the good news is that the board will complete their work prior to the 1-year anniversary, and that they've put a lot of information out in the lead up. And so that gives airlines, manufacturers, and others an opportunity to make changes to prevent something like this from happening again.
What did they learn?
Well, I think the things that they're looking at very closely have to do with the performance of the pilots, their training, their preparation, and also the interface with the automation on the aircraft, the use of the autopilot and other systems that can aid pilots, particularly in high workload environments.
Were mistakes made there?
Well, I think you're going to hear the board talk a lot today about some of the issues that were raised in the hearing in December. That has to do with how these pilots were trained. Were they familiar with the systems and the different modes that they operated in? Was there confusion? Did they know what was happening, and were they prepared for the landing that happened at San Francisco on a clear day with visual conditions?
It appears to me that one of the big headlines from this is that these crashes are survivable, that some of the victims that died were not wearing their seatbelts.
That is absolutely an important point for people to take away. And I know it gets mind-numbing sometimes listening to the safety briefings, flight after flight after flight, but it's so important to make sure that you're restrained every time. It's so low-tech, a seatbelt, but a huge life-saving measure, and knowing where the exits are to get out in an emergency.
So to be clear, how many of the people who died could have survived had they been wearing a seatbelt?
There were 3 people that died, so 99% of the people survived. But the board has looked at the positions where these people were found, done interviews with their seatmates, and they believe that 2 of the 3 were not restrained, were not wearing their seatbelts.
Wow. So what will they say about the person who was run over by the emergency vehicle?
You know, I think we'll have to hear what the board talks about today, but they will leave cause of death determinations to coroners or medical examiners. But the board will look at the pre-crash, the crash, and the post-crash environment to determine what happened and to make sure any emergency responders in a chaotic situation like what we saw in San Francisco don't get into a situation like that again. You've got to protect not just the injured and the living, but also the dead.
All right. My big takeaway is wear your seatbelt. So many people think, what's the point in a crash? Now you see. It makes a difference. Thank you, Deborah.